Now, I know Albo has said, again and again when asked, that he's not going to get rid of the stage 3 tax cuts. Jim Chalmers is I think, of the opinion that he wants to axe them. Could Labor be so stupid as to axe those stage 3 tax cuts?
Oh, absolutely. There is no question. I mean, at this point, stupid, not that that's a fair term, but I think stupid is probably the biggest driver of their policy. What are the policies they're trying to do to help Australians? That is a big black hole. And again, we've spent $300 million debating The Voice whilst we're silent at the wheel of this inflation crisis. So again, will the government continue to make errors? Yes. Can they help themselves? Yes. They should listen to the policies the people want, like reducing tax and improving productivity.
And speaking of reducing tax, one quite simple thing that they could do to reduce people's cost of living stress is to cut the excise tax again on fuel. There are some that say that that's inflationary. Some people dispute that. But either way, that seems to me, rather than spraying money around, quite a simple way to relieve people's budgets and gain some brownie points with the public. Why are they not cutting the excise tax?
Honestly, I cannot understand the pig-headedness. But I would say some goods, people need to realise that some goods, like petrol, are input costs for everything. And so the price of petrol is far more impactful than, let's say, the cost of other goods. And so to affect that and to remove the excise tax would actually flow through the economy in terms of bringing prices down. So again, this pig-headedness isn't just about saying, hey, we can't spend money. It's about saying we're not even thinking about doing the most impactful things to help Australians.
And look, pig-headed sort of is the operative word here when it comes to the Albanese government. I mean, putting through that referendum, for instance, continuing to push it through, even when it turned out they would not have bipartisan support, when Labor got a primary vote of just 32.6%. I mean, that alone should have been the warning for the Australian people to how this government was going to govern, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think at this point, the Australian people are pretty good-willed and they want to help people. They want to help the Indigenous people, there's no question. But if you're not going to do that as part of a team and as part of Team Australia, again, you're going to lose. And so the Albanese, sat down and refused to work with Dutton, and that's the government we have now. And unfortunately, I think the Australian people are coming to reconcile what it is, the government that they have chosen. And unfortunately, choosing Labor, you're getting this government you deserve.
Sadly, that is the case. Now, look, James, as the saying goes, strike while the iron is hot. And the iron is very, very hot now for Peter Dutton and the coalition to bring home this next election. My concern with the coalition, especially the Liberal Party over the last few years, is that they're too worried about people in the left media saying mean things about them. We saw that with Malcolm Turnbull. We certainly saw that with Scott Morrison. But now we have Dutton at the helm, Peter Dutton, who really doesn't seem to care very much at all what the media thinks of him, which is great. Do you think they are finally now up for the task of bringing home the next election?
I think for the first time in several governments, we've seen this opposition, this Liberal Party coalition, stand up for values-based policy and win. And so I'm hoping, I don't know if they fully learnt the lesson, but I'm hoping that they can see that actually continuing to govern through the values that have proven to work for Australia for generations is actually what the Australian people want. They will be rewarded for it. Does this mean that we have learnt all those lessons? I don't think so. I think there's ways to go, especially in certain areas of policy. But again, if Peter can continue to stick by the values of the Liberal National Coalition, I think he's going to do very well. And again, we saw The Voice get defeated phenomenally in quite a significant failure of the Labor government. And at the end of the day, actually, for the last few weeks, Peter Dutton wasn't actually campaigning. The nation just was very decisive on this.
Very, very much so. And look, on the subject of Peter Dutton, I mean, I really like Peter Dutton. He's a fantastic leader. He was exactly the leader the party needed. Certainly, after the election last year, he was just what they needed. There's an argument, though, out there that Peter Dutton needs to kind of soften his image. He's had these tough portfolios for immigration and home affairs. He's an ex-cop. He's quite sort of severe in his attitude. When you get him chatting, of course, he's actually great fun. We know he's very funny. But there's an argument that he needs to kind of soften his image. I'm not necessarily sold on that argument. I think a lot of Australians kind of like a tough leader. But look, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's a few ways of viewing this problem. First of all, just to be fair, Pia's favourability numbers are lower than Albanese's. And
Yes.
so that is a problem, and he is obviously working on that. I think part of that is that he unfairly gets prosecuted for being this mean, strong man. And I actually think that is a media onslaught that he just, it's the sort of the commentary that you get about his look of what he looks like. And I don't think that's reasonable nor fair. Do we want to see Peter Dutton as a more normal person, being able to have a beer in a pub with everyday Australians? Absolutely. And I think he's working on that. Do we see him now leading in policy and actually thought leadership for the country? Yes. And so again, I don't think Australians would hold it against Peter Dutton to say, we don't think you're that relatable, but you are standing up for the things that we care about, like inflation, like cost of living.